doing all right, or persevering, I guess, through it all. Um, Hi, Eric. Good to see you.
How are you, Leslie?
Doing all right.
So like we're only missing Steve and Robin Smith at this point, and we have not heard we have not heard if some of the representatives have changed for certain from everybody yet.
Okay,
Well, it changed in Blue Lake because Elaine Hogan didn't run again, unfortunately. I really miss her on the council. But anyway, she decided not to run again. So I said, well, I've always kind of been interested in this issue, so I would take over for this and let go of a few other liaisons that I do.
Adeline, did you guys select an alternate, and who is that?
No.
Okay.
Okay, well, it's 7:30, so I think we can get started. And let's go ahead and get the meeting going. We do have a quorum, but I will go ahead and call the meeting to order and do a roll call. Meredith Matthews.
Here for another 4 years.
Welcome. Adeline Jones.
Mayor of Blue Lake is here.
Mayor Jones, welcome. Leslie Castellano is here. Robin Smith is absent. And Steve Madrone, Director Madrone, is absent. And Frank Wilson.
I'm here for another 2 years. We confirmed our appointments.
Wonderful. Well, it's good to have you all here. And yeah, just want to welcome you, Mayor Jones, to the board. We have a really great and robust board, and we have some really exciting things happening at HWMA under Eric Keller-Heckman's leadership. So I think it's going to be a good time. And Mayor Jones, have you gotten to meet Interim Director Keller-Heckman and staff yet?
No, but I spoke to him on the phone the other day. But this is the first time I've seen him.
Oh, great. Well, maybe let's just do some quick introductions there, and then just so you kind of you have a welcome from everyone, and then we'll move on to the consent calendar.
I guess, Leslie, I'll go first. Eric Keller-Heckman, Interim Executive Director.
And I'm Jill Duffy, and I am the Interim Director of Operations as a retired annuitant.
And Nancy, do you want to introduce yourself too?
Sure. I am General Counsel for HWMA. Welcome back, Adeline. It'll be wonderful to work with you. I'm sorry, Mayor Jones.
Thank you. Thank you. No, Adeline's fine. Thank you.
Gary, you put your video on. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Good evening, Ms. Jones. My name is Tony Heacock, and I'm the Director of Environmental Health and Safety. I've been with the authority for 3 years now.
Hi.
Thanks, Gary. Sorry. Go ahead, Gary.
Gary Penning. I'm with Dry Creek Landfill, so we are your transportation and disposal provider for the solid waste. And I'm sorry about all the unpleasantness in Humboldt County for any of you that are going through that. So.
And hi, Adeline. I'm Meredith Matthews. I am Vice Mayor of Arcata.
Frank, do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Frank Wilson. I'm on City Council of Riddell.
I'm Leslie Castellano. I'm on City Council of the City of Eureka. We haven't done our new board and board appointments yet, but I am planning to stay. So you should see me in the upcoming months as well. Did I miss anyone? I think that's a good round of
We also have Laurel Uber. She is HWMA staff housed under Director Heacock in the Environmental Health and Safety Division. She also helps us out with taking minutes for the meetings.
And I'll usually be silent in the background, but occasionally I'll pop in to ask a clarifying question if I'm, not sure who said something or whatnot.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And Happy New Year. So with that, we will move on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the HWMA board and will be enacted upon by one motion unless a specific request for review is made by a board member or a member of the public. The consent calendar will not be read. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless pulled for discussion. Would anyone like to pull an item from the consent calendar for discussion?
I'd kind of like to pull B and talk about if we're going to go back in person anytime soon.
Thanks, Director Matthews. Okay, so we will go ahead and approve the consent calendar minus, or if there's a motion, entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item B. Would anyone like to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll move to accept the consent calendar item A.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it. Mayor Jones.
Thank you. All in favor? I'll do a roll call vote since we have cameras on and off. Director Matthews.
Aye.
Director Jones.
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
And I also vote aye. So 4 yes votes with Director Smith and Director Madrone absent. Motion carries. And so let's go ahead and move to item B.
And I apologize. Can I get the name of who made the initial motion?
Sure. Director Matthews made the motion, seconded by Director Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you. So item B is approve resolution 2023-08, a resolution of the Humboldt Waste Management Authority authorizing remote teleconference meetings of the legislative bodies of the Humboldt Waste Management Authority pursuant to Brown Act provisions due to a state of emergency.
Yeah, so maybe Council Diamond can talk about this. I know that our CEA will be going back to in-person in March. I have never been to an in-person HWMA meeting. I don't even know where we meet. I also acknowledge that COVID is still here. So again, I'm happy to do whatever the board wants to do, but I would just like to maybe talk about a timeline and where the meetings are and what they look like, and what it would look like, because I think there's now new stipulations to being remote. So maybe Council Diamond can talk to that.
Yeah, the governor's emergency proclamation expires at the end of February. Unless he continues it, I imagine there's some discussion at the state level of whether there's going to be an ongoing new wave of illness and whether to continue it or not. And the governor's proclamation is the requirement under the Brown Act for conducting these remote meetings. So once that has expired, then the board does have to go back to in-person meetings. There are brand new revisions to the previous provisions where there could be remote attendance, provided that a quorum of the board is present in person in the jurisdiction. Then other board members can attend remotely if it's noticed on the agenda when the agenda goes out with the location, and that location has to be ADA accessible. Now, that's not a new provision. That remains what was here, what was in the Brown Act before. There's new provisions that allow a board member to attend.
Thanks, Director Madrone. We will recognize that you're here in the minute to see you. And just so you know, legal counsel, we're on item on the consent calendar. We pulled item B to talk, and legal counsel is talking about the change in provisions around the Brown Act and the state of emergency, and we're discussing the potentiality of whether or not we may meet in person.
Yeah, so there is the new provision is for remote attendance is an individual board member may attend 3 times in 1 year if there's an emergency. And there has to be some form of notice that's given in advance, and then the board would have to recognize that reason. So previously, as some of you know, this board used the Eureka City Council chambers, and I don't know if Eric and his staff have begun to evaluate the potential of going back there or other spaces. And then for, the board members that, realize that there are advantages to not having to drive and commute to these meetings, if they want to maybe set up a place in an ADA accessible location in their home jurisdictions, they could attend there, and members of the public, they could attend from that location. Members of the public could join in there as well. Does that answer enough or give you enough of an overview? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And for everyone to know, I did speak with Assistant City Manager Powell about this a couple of months ago, knowing that, changes were coming. And, at that time, the City of Eureka Council chambers were still open and available for the HWMA meeting, should the board want to start to meet in person again there. And those meetings, or that space, does allow for a hybrid meeting if other board members can make the required plans, for their locations.
So we have one more board meeting that we can be remote to make the decision. All right. I don't know what's the general feeling of the board, about starting to meet in person again.
I'll speak up. I would like to be able to still do these remote sessions, but under the Brown Act that Nancy described, it's kind of, your hands are pretty well tied to. You've got to have some pretty strict, actually, reasons for not being in the meeting. So I certainly like to go through the next meeting, but unless something changes at the state level, I just don't really see how you're going to get out of having the in-person meetings to do that. So, although I get what they're saying, I just it seems like in today's technology that we should be able to do this as we have been, like the hybrid meetings, without having to make the trek all the way to, from the remote areas. It is a bit cumbersome to come into Eureka and then make your way back, for the time you get done. So that's just my personal preference.
Thanks, Director Wilson. Director Jones.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I just wanted to weigh in on this. At the Humboldt County Association of Governments meetings, which are held now in Eureka Chambers, and as you said, they have the ability to have remote participation. So occasionally we've had Caltrans, for instance, or I think a few times the mayor of Arcata, former mayor, Adkins Salazar, has zoomed in. So they have that capability, which is nice. We're doing the same thing in our Blue Lake City Council meetings, although it's a burden on the staff sometimes to have to make sure the public participation is there. But for our city council meetings, we are all meeting in person. And we've had some council persons wear masks during the meeting if they feel uncomfortable about being in a group. And then we have public zooming in. So I don't have a problem. And years ago when Jill Duffy was the director of HWMA, we met at the office of the HWMA. We met in, I think it was your foyer or something there, which was, you know, not a large space, but large enough that we could even accommodate some folks from outside. But I don't know if you guys have the ability to do anything remote at that spot. Anyway, those are my comments. Thanks.
Well, I am of the mind then that we should, you know, keep this going through the February meeting and plan then to be in person or hybrid in March.
Thanks, Director Matthews. Yeah, I tend to, I mean, and that may be what's required by law also. So, you know, whatever is required by law, I definitely want to do that. And, you know, I do enjoy the in-person meetings, but, you know, of course, I do recognize that can be a bit of a trek at night, especially for folks who are traveling from afar. You know, this is a county-wide group. And so, you know, I think this is just a question for legal counsel of, you know, as options and opportunities become available, could you just make sure to let us know so that we can both, you know, abide by the law and make sure we're supporting our other directors if we can.
One option that could be pursued is whether the you know, the facilities that are that hold the city council meetings in Rio Dell or Ferndale, for example, could the staffing that would be needed to accommodate that as a remote location that gets noticed on the agenda, whether that staffing could be reimbursed by HWMA. And so, you know, that would help reduce the driving for people in the southern portion of the county, and might be useful for members of the public as well if they wanted to be in person. So I don't know if I know that Director Smith is not here tonight, but I don't know if Director Wilson has any thoughts on that. And I also see that the Rio Dell, I thought I saw, maybe not. No, I take that back. I thought I saw Rio Dell's city manager, but I'm sorry.
Fortuna, Manager Perry is here, but not Rio Dell, I don't think. Okay, well, thank you. So it seems like, you know, perhaps a suggested motion would be to kind of move forward with approving this resolution as it's necessary to continue as we are, while also directing staff to explore options that may be available moving forward and come back to us with those next month. Does that?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Matthews. Thanks, Director Wilson. Okay, all in favor. Director Jones.
Excuse me, I just wanted to point out an error in the report that may not be a big deal, but maybe we could correct it. In the staff report recommendation on page, let's see, what is it on page? Oh gosh, what page is that? Page 6 of 15. In the recommended action, it lists the dates as for the period. This is for the resolution we're voting on right now, 2023-08. And it says in the last sentence, for the period of November 11, 2022 to January 12, 2022. I think that should be 2023. It's just in the recommended action, whereas I believe in the actual resolution, it's got the correct dates there. So it's just a minor correction in the staff report. Very minor, lots of dates.
And maybe it should say February, because we're going to
Well,
meet, well,
right, it's funny because in the resolution, it actually does say, it sort of covers the mixed period, which is January, what does it say? January, it says, where is that? Sorry, I'm scrolling around here. Sorry, I wasn't as prepared on this. In the heading of the resolution, it says for the period of January 13th, 2023 through February 9th, 2023.
okay. Yeah.
So Eric,
The recommended, he's correct. The recommended action is incorrect. The previous resolution covers through January 12th of 2023.
Beautiful.
This resolution would go into effect January 13th of 2023 and run to the date of our next board meeting. So the recommended action, language is incorrect, but the rest of the document and the resolution itself is correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of dates to jump around with. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry to hold things up.
No, thank you. It's always good to make sure we've got the dates correct, and I do that at the turn of the year. I put the old year. It takes me some training. So okay, so with that, we have a motion by Director Matthews and a second by Director Wilson. Director Jones.
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Director Matthews.
Yes.
Director Madrone.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. So 5 yes votes with Director Smith absent, motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Whoa, scrolled around. Okay. We will now move to item number 4, oral and written communication. This is the time provided for people to address the board or to submit written communications concerning matters not on this agenda. Board members may respond to statements, but any request that requires board action will be referred to staff for review. Reasonable time limits may be imposed on both the total amount of time allocated for this item and the time permitted to each individual speaker. Such time allotment or portion thereof shall not be transferred to other speakers. Are there any members of the public who wish to make comment at this time? Linda. Welcome. You're muted. Linda? If you're speaking, Linda, we can't hear you. Okay, well, maybe she's having some tech difficulties. Does anyone else wish to make comment? Linda, do you want to try one more time? It seems like you're not able to. I wonder if I can unmute you.
I just don't know how to use technology. Sorry. I was looking at you guys on a different page there. I just wanted to say that tomorrow our beloved Chuck Schauger is retiring from many years of service as as he worked with Eel River Disposal and then with Recology Eel River. And he's managed our recycling processing facility in Samoa. And I just want to give him a shout out. He's going to be difficult shoes to replace. We'll be having Fred. Hanks will be taking over his position, and so we're pleased about that. So we have crossover there. But anyway, I just wanted to give a shout out to the guy because he's wonderful, and I'm sure we'll still see him around.
I'm sorry, can you spell his name for me?
Schager, Schager.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, Linda, I got distracted for a moment. You said Chuck is leaving?
He's retiring.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's retiring. Yep.
I didn't realize he's that old, but when I think about it, he probably is. I didn't. I known him for a long time because he worked for Palco for a long time, and very, very great guy. We'll miss him. Ultimately, yes.
Well, thank you, Linda, for letting us know, and thanks, Wilson, for your words. We always appreciate someone who's been dedicated to their career for a long time. It makes a difference. Any other members of the public wish to make comment? Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment and move on to item number 5, elect authority officers for fiscal year 2022-2023. Let me scroll down to that. Okay. Sorry, I'm on my iPad. Okay, here we go. So this item is to nominate and elect officers for fiscal year 2022-2023, and I'll turn it over to Eric Keller-Heckman.
Thank you, Director Castellano. As outlined in the staff report, Vice Chair Hogan is no longer serving on the HWMA board. Staff recommends the board open the topic for discussion and elect a new vice chair to serve for the remainder of this fiscal year.
I would be happy to step into that role.
Thank you so much for stepping up, Director Matthews. Does anyone else wish to make comment on this item or make a motion?
I will make a motion that we accept Director Matthews' what her offer to take that position.
Thank you.
Second, Madrone.
Thank you. And there's a motion and a second. I realize I didn't open it up to public comment, so we will hold that motion on the table. And that was Director Wilson and making the motion, and Director Madrone seconding the motion. Do any members of the public wish to make comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. Is there any other discussion from the board?
I just want to thank you, Chair Castellano, for continuing to be the chair of the board. You do an excellent job, and I appreciate you continuing to serve. So thank you.
Well, I'm excited to work with you in this new position as vice chair. So thanks so much, Director Matthews, for stepping up. And with that, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Director Jones.
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Director Madrone.
Yes.
Director Matthews.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. So that's 5 yes votes. Motion carries. Director Smith absent. Okay. And we'll move on to the next item, number 6, which is the transfer and approve 1 material diversion technician 123 position from the Hawthorne Street transfer station to the Cummings Road landfill. And we have Director of Environmental Health and Safety, Tony Heacock, here.
I would move staff recommendation. Madrone.
I think Tony may want to make, but thank you. I think Tony may want to make a brief presentation about this first.
Absolutely. I'll put back my motion. No problem.
No, I appreciate that, Mr. McDermott. I'm not very good at public speaking. But yeah, I appreciate the support. Thank you for having me this evening. And yes, in the 3 years I've been working with the landfill staff, I found that it's a very exciting place to work. And even though it's decommissioned, there's a lot going on. And the systems that the folks up there operate have a lot of technical background, permitting requirements, etc. And so it takes a long time to learn how to operate those systems, and especially with the fact that the gas levels are diminishing, it's becoming more of a nuanced system to operate and continue compliance with the requirements. So I think it's a good move. It's also a pretty remote location in terms of accessibility to emergency services. So having 2 folks up there is a good minimum to have as a baseline, but with time off, vacation, injuries, those things, especially around the holidays, can become quite a juggling act to try to keep staff up there. And it's in certain situations, especially in the winter, it can be a nonstop sampling event. And so it can go on and on for days on end of time. So it's good to have extra people trained up. It takes a long time to learn. I'm still learning things every day. And I think it's a good opportunity right now for the authority to think about some succession planning so that we can build in some long-term management skills to keep the place going and stay in compliance. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thanks. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Go for it.
You're up at the Table Bluff place, right?
No, Mr. Wilson, we're at the top of Cummings Road.
You're on the Cummings Road one. Is there anyone out at the Table Bluff place?
I do not know for sure. I don't believe it's a staffed facility as far as I know.
Okay. Back at one point, maybe this is something for a future agenda that Mr. Keller can look at. We had discussed using the methane up there to generate power to offset whatever power usage there is at the Mitchell plant. Is that still a viable thing, or because you said it's increasing now as the gas continues on?
Yeah. So as Director Peacock, oh, go ahead, Tony. Tony, go ahead.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. That's a good question, Mr. Wilson. Yes, that was one of the first things I looked into when I got up there, was trying to find a alternative use for the methane. And someone in the past had done an evaluation on this and determined that the fuel was not clean enough, nor the quantity to support the infrastructure to turn it into a power source. Okay. So essentially the decision was made to combust the fuel at that time, and we continue to combust. And now about 2 years ago, it went from 24/7 combustion to now we're operating intermittently. And yeah, as it depletes, that opportunity is lessened, obviously. And then since no more materials coming, yeah, we don't foresee an increase in gas. And so yeah, we're pretty much just running it kind of till it quits producing methane.
Well, that's a good answer. The answer that we had, I think, previously was a little different. If I remember right, it's been several years, but I remember when the decision was made, and I'm not sure if I was on the board when we did it or not, but because I was on and then off and whatever. But it sounds like you've done more research, and I appreciate the better input on data. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other board members have questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll open it up to the public. Do any members of the public wish to make comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close this to the public and bring it back to the board. Do any board members wish for further discussion or to make a motion?
I would once again make a motion to approve the staff recommendation. And I just want to say, Mr. Heacock, you're an excellent public speaker. You did a great job of presenting a very nice, clear, summarized reasoning for this. So thank you very much.
I'll second.
Okay, Director Madrone with the motion and Director Matthews with the second. We'll bring it back to a vote. Director Jones,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Matthews,
Yes.
Director Madrone.
Yes.
I also vote yes. 5 yes votes with Director Smith absent. Motion carries. And we'll thank you, Director Heacock, for that. And we'll bring it back to item number 7, which is receive a presentation on organics collection and processing, along with proposed approaches and timelines. And this is Executive Director Eric Keller-Heckman.
Thank you, Chair. Can everybody see that? Is that a yes? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Yes.
All righty. So as Chair said, the organic collection and processing and proposed approaches and timelines. Today's presentation will be a brief overview of California legislative building blocks, local organics diversion services and efforts, and describe a preliminary pathway and timelines, which include SB 1383 compliance activities and coordination with local jurisdictions. As presented at the October meeting, the California Public Resources Code sets forth that cities and counties have the authority to regulate handling of solid waste within jurisdictions. AB 939, the Integrated Waste Management Act, was used to guide local agencies in the implementation of source reduction, recycling, composting, and environmentally safe disposal practices. Additionally, waste diversion mandates the specified 25% diversion of solid waste to landfills by January of 1995 and 50% by January of 2020. AB 341, the Mandatory Commercial Recycling Bill, was intended to help meet a diversion goal of 75% by 2020. The bill required qualifying commercial businesses, including multifamily apartments, to either self-haul or subscribe to a recycling service. AB 1826, the Mandatory Commercial Organics Recycling Bill, as part of a California recycling and greenhouse gas emissions goals, businesses and multifamily units that generate a specified amount of organic waste per week are required to arrange for organic recycling services and for jurisdictions to implement an organics recycling program effective April 1st of 2016. And finally, SB 1383. This is the most significant pollutant reduction mandate to be adopted in California in the last 30 years. It directly impacts solid waste services and changes how California disposes of organic materials. 1383 establishes targets to achieve 50% reduction of statewide disposal of organic waste by 2020 and a 75% reduction in that waste by 2025. Additionally, not less than 20% of currently disposed edible food must be recovered for human consumption by 2025. SB 1383 is not just an organics processing bill. Jurisdictions are also required to develop programs to meet diversion requirements set by the state. Specifically, that jurisdictions establish ordinances for the collection and diversion of materials and enforce compliance on commercial and residential generators. Program in this context means ordinance adoption, establishing administrative tracking and reporting systems, establish source-separated collection route services, education, procurement, and compliance enforcement mechanisms. Jurisdictions were required to complete ordinance amendments to meet these SB 1383 provisions by January 1st of 2022. By January of 2024, jurisdictions must start to take enforcement actions against these non-compliant entities. And finally, by January 2025, the target reduction goals must be met at the state level. It is important to understand the links between AB 341, AB 1826, and compliance with SB 1383. 341 and 1826 compliance serve as a stepping stone to the implementation of 1383. These bills require jurisdiction staff to develop generator lists, track and monitor compliance through desktop audits, and add existing infrastructure and collection routes as necessary. These systems would then be utilized and built upon to begin necessary compliant actions for 1383. Unfortunately, numerous communities in California still lack these services for commercial and multifamily complexes, resulting in a general lack of compliance and creating an even larger gap to become compliant with 1383. Next, we'll take a look at local organics diversion efforts to date. So in 2003, HWMA entered into a private-public partnership for the development of Mad River composting, locally known as West Green Company. HWMA invested in the environmental review, permitting, infrastructure, and committed green waste material to this privately owned facility. West Green currently provides processing services under a contract with HWMA. Unfortunately, at this time, they are not permitted to receive or process food waste. In 2011, 5 years prior to the passage of 1383, HWMA partnered with the City of Eureka and Humboldt State University to develop a food waste collection and diversion pilot project. HWMA received $200,000 in grant funding and provided matching funds to staff and resources to examine costs associated with food waste diversion in a variety of commercial settings within the Eureka area. This action entailed considerable planning, training, and education of HWMA staff and employees of about 60 participating restaurants. Implementation of the food collection pilot project began in late 2012, with food waste hauled to HWMA's transfer station and manually screened by HWMA employees. Bins were then loaded and transported to Coal Creek Compost in Ukiah for composting. The pilot project concluded in late 2013. The Eureka City Council at that time declined to pursue options of collection services due to the establishment of an additional collection route, long distance transportation, and higher disposal costs at the time compared to conventional landfilling. Alongside that 18-month pilot project, HWMA undertook efforts to develop an anaerobic digester and related infrastructure. Again, working with the City of Eureka and member agency staff, HWMA conducted a site study for a property located on Hillficker Lane, adjacent to the City of Eureka's wastewater treatment plant. HWMA entered into a contract with HDR Engineering to develop an anaerobic digester request for proposal, or RFP, and assist HWMA's Technical Advisory Committee with proposal evaluations. This RFP was circulated and 6 responsive proposals were ranked in late 2013. With the decision by the City of Eureka to decline establishment of a food waste collection service and none of the other member agency staffs supporting the establishment of route collection services, HWMA was unable to proceed with development of an anaerobic digester. At the time, related infrastructure development proposals conservatively ranged between $4 to $8 million. This did not include securing necessary permits, collection routes, or annual operating costs. Additionally, HWMA commissioned a waste characterization study in 2020 to assist in providing data for general composition of member agencies' waste and estimated organics that were currently being landfilled. The organic tonnage information was expected to quantify whether there was a measurable reduction of organics disposed when compared to the original study that took place in 2011. It was projected that this could help assist in sizing of a regional organics processing facility. Also, City of Eureka, Arcata, HSU, and Food for People got a food rescue project grant. This grant was delayed and impacted in part by the pandemic, but the overall goals were to increase food waste diversion and recovery, and their reductions in associated greenhouse gas emissions. More specifically, the food waste diversion goal for the project was 85 tons, and the grant term ended with 208 tons of food rescued and directed to food recovery organizations and recipients. HWMA has also undertook efforts to evaluate the purchase of Mad River Hardwoods property. Negotiations were initiated, but staff was directed to withdraw in late December of 2016. HWMA in 2018 and recently again this year looked at potential options at the Cummings Road landfill site for organics composting facilities. Next, we will walk through a rough organics processing timeline. Step 1 is the JPA amendment. This was initiated at the October board meeting. Staff has drafted proposed amendments, which include updating provisions in the original document from 1999, which are no longer relevant, such as specified revenue bonds and landfill closure construction costs that have either been retired or funding expended due to the landfill being closed. These amendments will be distributed for draft review to member agency staff this week. And it is expected that once the board approves the proposed amendments for circulation to members, it could take several months for the jurisdiction and governing bodies to review and approve. Step 2 is facility modifications. This step has also been initiated. Staff is currently working with Lawrence and Associates to develop the necessary construction bid documents. These documents are expected to be presented at the February meeting for the consideration and approval of the board. Typically, there's a 45-day response window with the board approving the lowest cost and responsive bidder. Due to the type of necessary repairs, again, it may take several months for the selected contractor to secure the necessary materials and supplies, mobilize, and finally complete the project. Step 3 is jurisdictions to complete ordinance amendments. Jurisdictions need to focus on completing their respective solid waste ordinance amendments for compliance with SB 1383. As previously noted, the state required jurisdictions ordinances to be completed no later than January 1st of 2022. Board members should confirm ordinance adoption and work with your respective staff if ordinances have not yet been approved. Step 4 is the processing and transportation RFP. Concurrently, HWMA staff will develop and coordinate an organics processing and transportation request for proposal for the board's consideration. HWMA's Technical Advisory Committee will be convened to provide evaluation ranking services and recommendation assistance. There will be specific considerations the HWMA board will need to determine, including length of contract, whether to specify in-county or out-of-county preference, and the possibility of entering into multiple contracts. Step 5, jurisdictions are responsible for negotiating with their respective franchise haulers in order to establish service and collection rates. This will enable haulers to order bins, vehicles, and other services based on the amended collection agreements and update curbside collection rates. Currently, new trucks and bins will not be available until late 2024 at the earliest. Step 4. The timeframe on the organic waste recovery facility depends on whether the selected contractor's facility is existing or will need to be developed. The preferred feedstock along with whether materials will be processed in county or out of county, and collection infrastructure is in place. Step 7 is rate development. With the anticipated organic volume and processing costs, HWMA will develop organic material fees for consideration by the board. Jurisdictions will coordinate with their respective haulers for collection rates. And finally, member agencies will establish and approve the collection and processing rates for curbside collection of organics. Staff anticipates a phased approach to organics collection and processing, primarily due to the current lack of infrastructure in place. This will also ensure a smooth transition and adequate time to address unforeseen issues, observe quality of material, and assess needed training and education abroad. Once implemented, ongoing monitoring and management will be necessary, with close coordination with members and their franchise haulers to address contamination and ensure education is being disseminated properly. In review, these are the immediate tasks to ensure this current process moves forward. For jurisdictions, they need to review JPA amendment prepared by HWMA and return comments if necessary. the governing bodies to approve designated flow control to the authority, finalizing the outstanding ordinance amendments, and negotiate and amend agreements with their franchise holders. For HWMA, draft JPA language will be circulated to jurisdictions for staff review, then brought before the board for final approval. Complete facility operations and improvements, develop the new waste management fee structure, develop the RFP for organics, and finally determine the facility receiving date. The board and elected officials and the public are encouraged to visit the top link in this below. The bottom link encompasses the entire SB 13883 regulation text. Staff recommends this evening that the board receive the preliminary tasks and timeline and direct staff to continue to identify necessary engineering and consulting services for board approval and continue SB 1383 implementation roles and responsibility discussion at the February HWMA board meeting.
Thank you. Appreciate the report. It's really valuable to see the current efforts along with historic or past efforts as well. First, we'll open up to board members for any questions. Do any members of the board have questions?
I just want to say that was fantastic. I feel better than I have for a while, just seeing that all like lined up like that. It's really good to have a timeline. Just want to say that Arcata, we've introduced our ordinance. We hope to get it passed in the spring. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Director Matthews. And Director Jones, I saw your hand up, and then Director Madron, you're next.
I also want to thank you for that. As a new person to the board recently here, that really gave me a good overview. And my question has to do with the Technical Advisory Commission. I know with the Humboldt County Association of Governments, our Technical Advisory Commission consists of the city managers of the various cities and jurisdictions. And as a new person, I was just curious to know who makes up your Technical Advisory Commission. If you could answer that question, number one. And then number two, I don't believe that Blue Lake has introduced any ordinance of this kind, and I think we would need direction for that to happen.
So I'll take the first one with General Counsel Diamond. Cue in as at any time if I'm wrong, but our Technical Advisory Committee is made up of our member agencies, city managers, along with the county CAO. So each member of HWMA, their city manager, and then obviously the county's CAO, it makes up our Technical Advisory Committee. As far as receiving direction for Blue Lake's ordinance, that's not something that HWMA would provide or give. That would be specifically only something that your jurisdictions would work on, whether that be with legal counsel, with staff. I would be more than happy to answer questions. I'm sure General Counsel Diamond would also be happy to answer questions, but that's not a direction that you would receive from HWMA.
Thank you.
Director Madron.
Yeah, thanks. That was a great presentation. Excuse me. It seems like maybe I'm wrong, but I would think that providing a sample ordinance or a template might be very useful to all of our member agencies. I thought we talked about this a little bit a couple of meetings ago, but I'm just not sure. I mean, how do we make sure that the ordinances that do get developed all have all the right things in them and are consistent, all across the membership? So that would be one thing. Perhaps Council Diamond can speak to that, or you, Eric, as well. A couple other observations. One, we all know we're kind of behind the eight ball here in terms of really, having to move forward very rapidly because certain deadlines are already passing, like the January 2022 and other things like that. And a lot of that had to do with all of us, including the county, not having committed to flow control, and as well, that influenced the outcome of the study on a local digester, right? Because that failed or went away because there was no commitment to flow control. It looks to me now that I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I know the county is prepared to commit. I think we already have committed to flow control. I have to double check that. But it looks to me like either we all commit to flow control, get our ordinances done, or we're going to be subject to all kinds of fines and spend the money that way, right? So that's just not what we want to do. I think we all want to move forward together and get this done. And I'm just wondering, it seems to me that I'm wondering if we can revisit that digester study and put into it the fact that there is going to be flow. And we know that now because otherwise I don't know what we've got going on. So, because I think most of us would really prefer, if not in the short term, in the long term, to be managing this waste locally. And if there is a product to be shipped and, fossil fuels to be spent on trucking, it should be on a finished product, on a value-added fertilizer product or something else. And if morning does actually happen, people have suggested that, that creates an opportunity to take all this organic food waste and the fish waste and create an amazing fertilizer product that is value-added that could be shipped versus shipping a raw product off to Ukiah or anywhere else and just having a huge fossil fuel footprint. So those are just a couple of thoughts that I had at this point.
Thank you, Director Madrone. So just for a point of clarification, when the authority was under contract on behalf of the participating jurisdictions for the SB 1383 compliance and roadmap preparation, Edgar and Associates did supply all participating jurisdictions with a draft ordinance for use to tailor for their own ordinance needs. Again, that is not a process that HWMA was privy to or a part of. That is really set up for each jurisdiction itself, but a draft ordinance was provided by Edgar and Associates at that time. To your second point, HWMA staff is more than willing to look into any opportunities or possible processes at this time. We are currently finalizing the draft RFP for the processing and transportation services that will be coming before the board. But the talks of a digester in county would be a much larger conversation than we currently have a time frame for.
Director Wilson.
Yes, I thank you for the presentation. First of all, Aaron, and even though you're interim, you're doing an excellent job. I see it beyond interim. That's an off the cuff comment. But anyway, my question stems around the obtaining the trucks and some of the constraints that we had. If I remember right, the state agencies weren't happy with that restraint that we had, and they said they weren't accepting it. How does that fit into the timeline?
So it's a difficult situation currently right now to navigate. So because we do not have an in-county processor, because we currently don't know exactly where this material is going to go, what type of feedstock the proposer could require, that feedstock can alter or change how that material is collected at the curbside or from commercial entities. So without knowing either how jurisdictions want to collect it or how we need to provide it to potential proposers, it's difficult for the jurisdictions and franchise haulers to have a conversation about those exact collection services, which without having those conversations, it's difficult for Recology or Humboldt Sanitation or any franchise hauler to commit to capital expenditures that potentially either may be unneeded or not correct in the purchase. The difficulty with that is the timeline is only going to continue to get longer because of supply chain constraint issues. As far as I've talked to jurisdictions, CalRecycle still is not buying the fact that franchise haulers can't provide or get trucks. That is not going to be an excuse. Any of the jurisdiction staff that's here tonight be more than happy to correct me on that, but I don't believe that will be an option for jurisdictions to not comply. I don't really have a good answer other than we are attempting to get this timeline moving as fast as possible. So both ends, the collection and the final end destination, are a little bit more ironed out. So we have a better idea of what the ecosystem of organic collection, processing, and recycling will look like in Humboldt County.
So, a couple of vague answers that, and I get the restraints that are behind those, but as we knew when we're facing these deadlines, is the thing that's the big issue of what is going to be the recycling center, or how we get rid of it. I mean, is that something you're going to present to us in February a little better, or is it still something we've got to go through some more steps to even get to that point?
No, it's not so much an issue of we can't do it. It's that we currently don't know. So the RFP for transportation and end use of organics will be coming before this board in February.
Okay.
That should, once we receive proposals, should give us a better idea of how we want to treat organics in this county. With that said, jurisdictions and franchise haulers have been having conversations already. We just don't know the exact particulars on how everything is going to be collected, brought to the authority, and then transported from here.
All right. Thank you.
I have maybe a question related to that. So, my understanding is that there may be a few different options for where it could go. And, even maybe part of it staying here, ideally, right? Even if that's not immediately a possibility in the future. And my understanding is that each of those places maybe would want the waste in a different way, or there might be different stipulations around how that waste could or should be received. Have you done an analysis of those options in terms of like what the cost might be, what the different sort of forms the waste would, the compost, would have to be in? Including any possibilities for some, I know there was a group looking at energy generation in Ferndale.
Yeah, so the authority in the past and recently have done rough overviews of these type of activities, but the RFP respondents will outline very specifically the associated tasks and costs for getting this material from our transfer state, from the processing facility at Hawthorne Street to the successful proposer. That's really, the staff can analyze or make phone calls or make projections, but this RFP's proposals really will do that for us.
Okay, so the RFP will also be, in my mind, I think like that part's already been decided. And so then we're just, specifically looking for, we want this, and in our, we're asking for this, and how much does it cost? So the RFP itself will also kind of ask haulers, facilities, et cetera, sort of like like, if you take our compost, kind of like, what does it need to look like, and how much that will cost, basically.
Correct. So, and I'll give you two quick non-specific examples.
Okay, thanks.
So a proposed facility is an anaerobic digestion facility. They are interested in only food waste and post-processed slurry. So they are not interested in green waste or woody food waste. That would alter how we collect potentially and process or separate out that material at the Hawthorne Street transfer station. Now, another proposer could potentially say, we would take it all. It does not need to be processed. So that could alter or make collection easier. And then that would alter operations at the Hawthorne Street transfer station. So the feedstock required from the proposer will definitely alter operations at the transfer station and could potentially alter franchise collection of that material. Did that answer a little bit of it?
Yes, thank you so much. That really makes it super clear. And then somewhat related, I know that there are funding opportunities potentially on the horizon. I've heard, like a Cal Recycles grant, things like that. Will we still be, with the timeline presented, will we still be on track to, take advantage of as many funding opportunities as possible?
So what I can say is HWMA staff will take advantage of any grant opportunity or any funding mechanism that we can to ease the capital costs on the authority. Obviously, all of these costs were unbudgeted, unplanned for. So any grant funding or additional funding that we can secure, we will definitely be pursuing that.
Sweet, thank you. Director Wilson, did you have another question?
Well, I probably do, but I think that with your question helps clarify with his answer that we're waiting heavily on this RFP. I guess I'm just still, and I don't know if anybody can answer it, how we're falling behind as jurisdictions kind of in a sequential order as far as complying with the state. Again, Riadell isn't in as big a spot as some of the other jurisdictions because we have somewhat of a exemption because we're a smaller city. That doesn't mean that we're going to be ahead of the game by the time some of this stuff gets worked out. And I don't know. I want to commend the executive director that he's making a lot of progress to bring us to a place where we can try to get these answers. We lost a year that was for the timeline's sake, we lost a valuable year through all of the circumstances that took place with the previous executive director. And so I'm positive. I don't say positive, I have a positive outlook with where we're headed and how we're getting there and how we deal with the state. It's kind of like the current situation in the county. I mean, I can't tell you what's going to happen if there's another earthquake in the next 24 minutes. What that's going to do to us. So I'm looking to work for the best, and I think the people that we have working for that are doing the best they can. And so it's more of a wait and see situation to me, and just want to remain positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wilson. And with that, we will open it up to public comment. To any members of the public wish to make comment? Jennifer Weiss, is that your hand up?
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Jenny Weiss with Humboldt County Public Works. And I just also wanted to thank Eric for that presentation. That was really a great summary and really helpful to understand some of the more complex pieces. And I wanted to just clarify that the county does, we do have our ordinance in place. We're just needing to make some clarifying language to our code about enforcement. But our ordinance is in place, and so I just wanted to make sure that you knew that. And also, I appreciate the interest by Director Madrone in the local digester and the study that was already completed. And, with the biggest issue last time for it not being successful is not having the flow control, which sounds like we're going to have now. And, I recognize that, this RFP process that HWMA that you're pushing forward for the transportation and processing is necessary. And I appreciate, like Director Wilson said, the speediness that you're making it happen now, and that it's necessary. But I also really hope that we can continue the conversation about the local, a local in-county solution kind of simultaneously, like this digester, and create like a really great product, like Director Madrone said. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. City Manager Perry.
Thank you. I also want to say I appreciate HWMA's effort on this. Even though the City of Fortuna isn't a JPA member, we're hoping that we can find a way to work collaboratively, and I hope that we're included in some form with the JPA amendments. And I don't have the specifics on that yet, and I know that Eric's been including us in the discussion about what needs to happen to the JPA to let Fortuna and potentially Trinidad participate in the bigger effort for the organics collection. So we're very closely monitoring it. The city's involvement has been primarily through the Solid Waste Task Force, and that's a group that we have all the cities in the county coming together. But there are a number of areas of this legislation that we're working on in parallel. This one that HWMA is working on that Eric described, the organics collection facility, is the critical path really for all of the agencies to be able to comply with the organic collection. Without this tipping floor, there's not really anywhere that, has been identified that all of the agencies can take it. And so all of the jurisdictions are really dependent on this effort. Similarly, there's a food recovery effort that the county's undertaking to put out an RFP and to work with the rest of the jurisdictions of the region for food recovery. So it's very much been a regional effort. This is one portion of it. And I just want to say that the city would like to continue to be included in this effort for the organic waste collection, and appreciate HWA's time in including the city in the efforts thus far.
Thank you. City Planner Suffolk.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to also include information that the City of Arcata City Council had the second reading of their ordinance that would incorporate SB 1383 regulations. And that was adopted on December 21st. So it's my understanding that 30 days after that, it is goes into effect. And at that same meeting, actually the first reading, when the first reading was held in November, that is a time when the City Council authorized a letter of commitment that dedicated flow control of the source separated organics to HWMA. That was brought at the request of HWMA. So I just wanted to add that information. Thanks.
Thank you. Do any other members of the public wish to make comment at this time? Oh, I see someone marked iPhone. You're muted. I think that's Evan Edgars.
Evan Edgar, live from Sacramento, California. Directors, great presentation by Eric today. I'm the author of the roadmap, the SB 1383 roadmap, and this is great. You guys are following the roadmap. Within that, they have the RFP criteria, and Eric's right. There's different collection, different processors that would take the material, take it in different formats. And within the roadmap, we talk about bidding it either raw food waste and raw commercial food waste, not the green stuff, but the green waste you want to stay in county. But the food waste, until there's an in-county solution, that raw food waste is about 30% contamination. And so some facilities, there's 3 of them that were identified in the roadmap that have what we call a food waste processing machine. It's a Scott's floor separator where you put all the commercial food waste, and with a bunch of hammer mills and extruding, out comes an organic slurry. That's the slurry that Eric was talking about. And so of those facilities identified in the roadmap, 3 of them have a Scott's that can make a slurry and use it on their compost facility out of county. The other 6 do not. They would only have to take raw commercial. They can't take, some of them can't take raw commercial food waste because they don't have a slurry machine, and you just can't dump 30% contaminated commercial food waste into a windrow. So you got to have that machinery. So also in the roadmap, we're talking about permitting the Hawthorne Street Transfer Station to include a Scott's authorities. And that was a 30-day out. The LEA agreed that within 30 days, the Hawthorne Street could be permit ready. And that's really important because one thing that was brought up by director is the grant process. CalRecycle will be issuing a grant this week. Will go out as solicitation. They had comments at it. The December CalRecycle meeting had comments, and they did some great work. They upped it from 75 million to 155 million. They carved out 81 million for local government. They carved out 3 million for pre-processing, and they have a rural preference now. So this was designed for Humboldt. This was made for Humboldt, this grant solicitation. So Humboldt County could apply for a $3 million grant for pre-processing at your Hawthorne Street Transfer Station. What I saw in the November board meeting, Eric had a presentation on the rough cost to the floors and the doors. It was about 1.7, I think, 1.8 million. And the Scott's machine is about $1 million. So that's about 2.7 million. And the gas is about 3 million. So it's a great fit at a perfect time. And thinking about the Scott's, what they did, and Winnie Ring is an active member of the public. We talked a few times, the whole issue about microplastics. So some of these machines, when you hammer, mill, or extrude food waste, the plastic could be microplastics. Big deal. Well, Scott's has a polishing system that takes the contamination, the microplastics out. So by having a slurry, by applying for a grant, it will be due in April, early April or late March. And it's got a lot you got to do. You got to do feedstock certification, community benefit agreement to help you get extra 5 points to maybe have a budget for feed hungry people as an edible food recovery program. You got to have a business plan, a pro forma. You have to be technical viable, and it's $3 million. It's a 2.5-year grant, and they hold 10% back. So and you have to get reimbursed for expenses. So it's a great opportunity. I'm doing 10 of them right now at public and private facilities. I got 10 I got going on right now. So my firm has done a lot of grants over the years, and it's a great opportunity. And once you have the slurry, you can keep it in county. You have a lot more opportunity on the slurry. And this is all in the roadmap where the slurry can go to the dairy digester in Ferndale. They're going to be open the first quarter of 2024. It can go to local wastewater. It can go to make fish food up at Nordic for the fish farm, or it can be exported out on RFP to one of the compost facilities. They have more choices. You have 9 choices if it's slurry versus 3 choices if it's this raw food waste. So this is a perfect time. I had a proposal last week into Eric. My firm does this all the time. It's for 2% of the $3 million for $60,000. I can crank up the grant. The engines are going to start next week, and it's due in April. It's a lot of work, and to pull it all together, a lot of forms. I've done a lot of them. Some of the firms in Sacramento charge $100,000 for grants out there, and they're grant writing firms. Well, I'm a project developer, so I approach this grant. I'm developing a project. All this is in the roadmap. I highly recommend the authority apply for this grant when it comes out next week. And I'm here to help in any capacity that Eric and the team wants, because this is something we envisioned and worked on together. And I'm here to implement the roadmap. And I'm a part-time resident of Eureka. So I want to be successful here. Thank you for the time. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board now. Do any members of the board wish to comment on this, or do board members have any other questions they want to ask? Okay. Well, I have a little bit of a comment, and then maybe other board members. And then I think, Eric, at some point, we may want to receive your suggested motion again at some point too. Let's see, I do want to kind of echo other board members and some of our public commenters' sentiments of, keeping product in county. Ultimately, I realize that may not be the first step, but I think that, it's an important part of our planning process. So for me, definitely that's something that I think, it's ultimately, I think, the more sustainable solution, as we're working on this. And I do think, it would be, and I guess this is maybe a question for staff is like, would it be helpful for, and for the board to have a working group that's kind of looking at some of these analyses a little deeper? Do folks want to kind of wait until the next meeting for the next presentation? Are folks wanting to, is there anyone who would want to meet on this in between now and then? Okay. That's a no, I think. Okay. Great. I can follow up with you too, Eric, on that. For a second, I was like, can anyone hear me? No, but let's see. In terms of, I guess, could you go ahead and post your recommendation back up just so I can have that as a frame of reference? Super, thanks. That all makes sense. So the one that comes to mind is equipment, power, I can imagine a few pieces of equipment. One of them, and be also imagine others. I don't want to, speculate too much in the context of this meeting, but I was just curious.
Breaking up a little less.
Director, you're gonna have to repeat. You're gonna have to repeat what you just said. At least on mine, everything was very garbled.
Okay. Well, I'll call on Director Madrone for right now.
Thank you, Chair. I would be willing to move these recommendations, and I'm just wondering if it might be appropriate to add a fourth item that would be to encourage all member jurisdictions to move forward judiciously with reviewing and adopting ordinances for the flow control aspects, et cetera. I'm just wondering if that might be appropriate. I don't want to tell anybody what to do, but I do think it's urgent that we get that done. And I really appreciate that, Eric, you pointed out that a sample ordinance is available in the work that was done by our consultant who just spoke with us. So for Blue Lake or other jurisdictions, that sounds like a great resource to go to. But would it be appropriate to maybe just add that encouragement? Again, I don't want to direct anybody in that way, but I think it is crucial that we move forward together on this quickly, because once we get all that in place, then it allows us to have better responses from the RFP. Anybody that might be recommending or proposing anything will have a sense of what they're going to be working with, right? So, I don't know. What do you think about that, Eric and or Chair Castellano or other directors here? Just a thought.
Yeah, I think that, are you asking for staff to encourage other jurisdictions, or are you yourself encouraging other jurisdictions?
I'm suggesting that we as a board consider adding that as a fourth recommendation, that we encourage that action within the jurisdictions as soon as possible. I think there's some urgency here. I think, we really need to, Eric's doing a great job of helping us stay in line with, as our consultant said, following the timeline, following the pathway. And that's such a crucial piece to it all, getting those things in place and having that flow control established. I don't want to see that language for 6 to 9 months personally.
Okay, and I see Jill definitely has her hand up.
So I like the suggestion that the board is encouraging all of the members and actually just local jurisdictions as a whole to be taking the necessary steps. But I also want to remind you that you're all elected representatives for your governing bodies. And so it would be really great if you would go back to your city managers and ask them, where are we in this process? Because this is a mandate by the state for compliance. And this is something that was issued in 2016, and Cal Recycle has been meeting with your staff on a regular basis for quite some time. So you should talk with your city managers and staff members to find out where you are in that process. And that's all I would add there.
Thank you. And I just want to let folks know that it is scheduled for City of Eureka in February to come before the board in February. In terms of having staff encourage, I think, I'm just wondering from a staff perspective, if that puts you in a strange position in terms of government to government, or, if you're, no, okay, perfect. Then sure. And I do think that it's also good if we all encourage our own bodies of government to move forward with this as well. So there is a motion.
I have one more question, Madam Chair. The other element, it seems, is getting as many jurisdictions on board as possible. And as Mayor pointed out, Fortuna and Trinidad are not members yet, but there's a process there. Do we need any encouragement there? Is that a process that's already got a life of its own? I'm just curious if we need to be considering any encouragement there.
I know that that has come up at past meetings, that there are discussions taking place with those jurisdictions.
That is correct, Chair Castellano. HWMA staff has had several conversations with non-member agency staff, not only about this process, but the potential pathways for coming on to the authority. So those conversations have had, and they are continuing to be had as we move through this process.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that response. And if I might, through the chair?
Yes.
So let's just add that fourth recommendation that we encourage, the jurisdictions to get back with their cities, just like Jill said, and see where everybody's at in that process and move that forward. So I would add that fourth recommendation and move to approve the staff's recommendations plus that fourth addition.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, Director Madrone making the motion and Director Matthews seconding it. Is there any more discussion from the board? Okay, then we'll take a vote at Director Madrone.
Yes.
Director Matthews.
Yes.
Director Jones.
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. That 5 yes votes, Director Smith absent, motion carries. Okay, and we will move on. Sorry, glitches. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is standing item number 8, board member reports. Do any board members wish to make a report at this time? Okay. Seeing none, we will close that item. and move on to item 9, the executive director's report. Eric.
Thank you, Chair Castellano. So as one of the things mentioned earlier, I was going to touch on the potential grant opportunities afforded to the authority for organics, but I think some members of the public and the board have thoroughly gone through that opportunity. So that is something that HWMA is currently looking into. Additionally, I would request that when you go back to your governing boards, when you appoint your alternates, to please notify myself or anyone at the authority with their contact info, their phone number, all that. That way we can update the website. I can make sure I update my mailing lists, things like that. I would also say that next meeting, prepare to get a very in-depth explanation on SB 1383, the rules for not only jurisdictions, but franchise haulers, other entities. HWMA staff will be taking an in-depth look at that to make sure everyone new and who has been on board is fully up to speed. I would also encourage, if your alternates can read the board packet and view the meeting at a later date, I would encourage that as well. We are going to be making some very large decisions relating to organics in Humboldt County. And I think the better everyone can be prepared and have a working knowledge of that material, it will serve everyone in the best way. At that, I conclude my executive director's report. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you and your report. Okay. Well, that brings us to the close of our meeting, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Hey, Leslie, can I ask you a quick question before you jump off?
Sure.
It's been brought up at our council meetings a bunch of times. The City of Eureka has a very cute little pamphlet that they have distributed that kind of lays out what SB 1383 looks like. Is that something that I can get a look at? And
for sure, we can definitely. Yep, we will share that with you.
Let me know are you at work tomorrow? I can run next door.
No, but I'll get in touch with project manager Prasker and have her get in touch with you about it.
Wonderful. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
All right. Happy New Year, Leslie. We'll talk to you later.
Happy New Year.